My name is Michael Posillico. I'm a father of 6 children. And about 2 years ago, I had woken up one morning and I felt flu-like. And I had a very bad back pain. And what happened was I felt like I had to go to the chiropractor. I wanted to get adjusted. So I felt flu-like. So I went to the doctor first. Couldn't even get into my doctor. So I went to another doctor. And that doctor said, "You got the flu, go home, drink a lot of water, blah, blah, blah." So I did that. And the next morning, I couldn't get out of bed, about 5 in the morning. Physically could not get out of bed. It was very scary. I was basically paralyzed almost from my back up in the bed. Now, at this time, I had 5 children, so it's a little alarming for my wife to see this. So she called my twin brother over and said, there's something wrong here. So he got me out of bed. I was basically bent over in a lot of pain. I want to say that morning I had gone to the bathroom, I urinated, and I think it was brown. So I was pretty bad. And my eyes were jaundiced. How that doctor did not see any of those signs the day before. But anyway, so what happened was I went into the hospital, the first hospital. I'm not going to mention any names here because it was a horrible experience. And I went into the first hospital, and I was bad, and the hospital wasn't prepared for a case like mine. They were doing kind of emergency blood work on me, and they could not figure out what was going on with, me. And I had about 103.5 temperature now. And everything they were looking at, I remember one looking at me, they were like getting panicky. I saw it in their eyes, and that's what was making me panicky. Because I knew with all their expertise, I knew I was in the wrong hospital. And I remember the doctor saying to me she whispered like on a cell phone or a speaker or something, "Can you get all these other doctors down here?" I said, "Oh, this is not good." So that she's calling every doctor, literally in the emergency room, to come over to me. So we made the decision, along with I think my brother Johnny, and he knew some people, to get me out of there immediately. And they wanted to get me out of that situation without going through to be admitted and getting directly into another hospital room. So we went from that hospital to the second hospital. And I was in that hospital, and then from there on, I don't really remember anything, because I remember the first hospital. I was there, I think, a day or 13 hours, something like that. And I left at 2 o'clock in the morning by an ambulance. But let me regress for 1 second. I want to go back to 1 second. After that first doctor told me I was sick, you had the flu, go home. And I didn't feel good that next morning. I forgot the one part I left out. My brother comes, he gets me out of bed. I said, "Let me go to a chiropractor before." I said, "Maybe I ripped a muscle in my lung area. So you could pull a rib, broken rib, and you could have those effects of not breathing great." And I wasn't breathing great. So I went into the chiropractor out of the blue, and he comes and looks at me, and then he goes on I hear him take a speaker, and he says something like on a cell phone, like an emergency cell phone. I was coming in and out of it a little bit, and it was like, by the grace of God, that this guy was an EMT worker, and he was the head of the Jericho Fire Department. And I would say within 5 minutes, he had 6 firemen there. And I wasn't aware. I was talking like this to him, I remember. But I was in pain. And he knew right away something was seriously wrong. So he's the one who got me into the ambulance to go to the first hospital. And then I experienced all that with those doctors. I knew they didn't know what they were doing. I'm not putting them down. They just did not have the expertise. They had no clue what was wrong with me, because I was out working and running and, 2 days before. So we get to the second hospital now with another ambulance. I think I've had 3 or 4 ambulances in this 2 days. That's how serious I was. We get to the next hospital, and I was at this point very bad. I basically went into, I would say, a coma, basically on and off. I was bad. I would say someone said the percentage chance of me living was probably 4%, and my whole body basically was septic. So whatever the infection was traveling very quickly. and I still had the very high fever. And we finally called one of our doctors, our family doctors, to come in, and he thought that the best thing to do was to get me to another hospital. It wasn't that that hospital was bad, it's just that he knew everybody who was everybody that I needed to get to. And I want to draw back one more point I make, is that I had a defibrillator in me from an issue 4 years earlier. I was given a defibrillator. It never went off. It was probably not needed, but that's what they do. So I had a defibrillator in me, and apparently it had gotten infected. And so when I kind of went into almost this coma point, the reason they were starting to give me antibiotics, if you have anything artificial in your body, the antibiotics are not going to get to something artificial. It's plastic or whatever it's made of. So you can kill all the bacteria in your body, but you're not going to get to that. And the problem with it was Tom would even know. I don't know all the details. Some of them I don't even want to know, So it was a severe bacteria. I don't know if it was MSR or whatever you call it, MRSA or whatever. And it was pretty bad. So we were transported to another hospital. And in that hospital, I remember my wife had asking one of the doctors, why are we going to this hospital? He says, well, you could have the student at this first hospital take this defibrillator out, or you could have the guy who taught the student. That's why we went to the last hospital. He was the best around. We were talking about flying someone in, but apparently this guy was amazing. And the big concern with me was that this bacteria was on the defibrillator's lines that go into the heart. And the bacteria it's really nasty. It's basically a death knell. And that bacteria, if it comes off those leads into the heart, forget it. The damage to the heart and the valve, everything's shot. And this doctor was amazing. I have to tell you that. He came in, he took the defibrillator out, and we were on pins and needles. By this time, there might have been, I don't know, it could have been 2-3 dozen people at the hospital, because I'm a big family, and the word spread how sick I was. And I don't remember any of this. None of it. And he did the surgery, and it was like a miracle that the bacteria did not fall off the leads, taking it out. Because he said, if I pull that out, he said, and that bacteria falls into the heart, he's done. And so it was a wait-and-see game. Anyway, to make a long story short, I was in the hospital for February, March, and I think I left late April. So I was really in bad shape, and I think I was partly into my own coma and then an induced coma. And in that time, the bacteria had shut down my kidneys completely. They also, my lungs were an absolute mess. And they basically affected all the vital organs. It was by the grace of God that my heart somehow, some way was not affected with this bacteria, or at least no major damage to the valves in the subsequent testing I took on it. Anyway, the word spread, and Tom came to the hospital, and he saw me, and he went home and told my brother John, he says, he's not going to get out of there. But again, a 4% chance, it was nothing new. And he said, he's really bad there. And by then I had a nephrologist, which is a kidney doctor. I had a pulmonologist. I had a cardiologist. Every single part. And I had surgeries. We were having emergency surgeries going on. I have all over my body emergency surgeries going on. And I was in and out the whole time. They had me on every psychotropic drug you could imagine. So it was a very tough time. And Tom asked my brother Johnny, listen, I want to give him that juice because they were starting dialysis. And Tom was like, he's not going to get out of there if you don't give him this juice. And I remember I was in bed. I don't remember ever having to pee ever in there. I just don't remember it. I never had to. I couldn't. And so Tom got the permission from my family and my brother Johnny and spoke to my wife, who was basically doing bedtime vigils. She's like, listen, we'll sneak this stuff in. Because the doctors, you don't dare mention anything like this in a hospital. They're good people. They're trained in a box, and that's all they know. If something gets cured, they say keep doing it, but they don't want to know. That I have a little disrespect for some of them about, because, you know, if you're going to attain knowledge in your life and you see something you don't know, at least look into it. It doesn't have to threaten your, you know, what you do for a living, you know. But anyway, that being said, the nephrologist is a good guy. So Tom made some concoction. It tasted like breast milk. I've never tasted breast milk, but I'm just telling you, it tasted like breast milk. It looked like it. But anyway, so he made some concoction, and he told my wife, let's just sneak this into him at night. So, by the way, my nausea was so bad. I was nauseous for 3 months. I'm telling you, honestly, I don't know if there's anything worse than nausea. You just don't feel like doing anything. You don't even want to look at food, and the one thing you need is food so you can rebuild your body, and I don't want to look at anything. So Tom had put some of the juice on rice, and I wouldn't even eat it all. I didn't want to eat. I was sick as a dog. Everything was going haywire with me. So what happened was Tom somehow soaked a little bit of rice with the juice. Now, he had to tell me this, and my wife told me this, I don't remember this at all. And he goes, just take 1 kernel of rice. So I took the kernel of rice. So, all right, fine. That's it. I'm not eating anything else. I'm nauseous. When you're nauseous, you don't want to go near food. You don't even want to go near drink. You don't even want to talk to anyone. You're just like buckled over in nausea. And all the medicine they give you in the hospital for the nausea makes you worse. It's terrible. Anyway, so what happened was, in fact, the side effects of all the medicine they gave, I had to look into this, was nausea. Okay, so they're giving me that for nausea. So anyway, he gives me 1 kernel of rice. And I guess I took it. And then I guess within a half hour, he must have given me a whole thing of rice. My appetite instantly came back from this little 1 piece of rice. And I started eating all the rice. And then that was it, you know. And then Tom went home. So I remember at that stage, and again, when you're in the hospital for so long with so many drugs on you, my timeline's a little shaky with, you know, like, how did I get through to Tom, or did my wife call him on the phone, or did he hand me the phone to speak to Tom? So Tom called me like 4 hours later. It might have been 9 or 10 o'clock at night. And I said to him, Tom, I said, my left ankle has electricity going through it. I said, I'm a little weirded out by it. I said, it's almost like you were plugging my ankle into a socket, but locally, nothing through my body. So he's like, that's amazing. That's great. I'm like, what? He goes, that is the meridian for the kidneys. That zone, the ankle zone. And I knew a lot about acupuncture, so I used to go to acupuncture. And Tom actually came to me a couple times, gave me acupuncture. I want to make another side note here just to tell you how bad I was with my kidneys. I was on full-blown dialysis. I've never urinated before this rice incident. And they were bringing in the kidney machine, the dialysis machine into the room. It's a horrible experience because the hospitals sub out. It's not even a doctor. There was a guy, barely spoke English, that was giving this machine. He didn't know what he was doing. A couple times the machine flooded the room. I remember being very, very anxious, filled on it, seeing what was ever in my body on the floor, and this happened every time he gave it. And I said, you're not hooking up the plumbing right. I would be arguing with them, and only finally, and I give you a funny story that I said to him, I said, I'm not going to complain about you anymore. You don't know what you're doing. So I look up in this dead true story, I look up and there's 2 guys in orange suits in my room, and I thought I was seeing things. And they come up and they're from the, what do you call in a hospital? They're the janitors union or whatever. He goes, what are you doing up here? You're leaking on the patient downstairs. I had leaked so much water out of me in the machine, which was not taking it, was taking it out and filling the machine. I said, thank you guys. I've been telling you for days I'm leaking, you know, like that. So it was a horrible experience, the whole thing. They didn't know how to take the water out of me. One time they were taking the water out of me and I couldn't breathe. And the doctor said to me, just nebulize. I said, it's not nebulized. I said, I cannot breathe. I said, get that. I said, so they brought an x-ray machine in. X-ray me, he goes, you have 2 liters of water they left in you. The guy couldn't figure out how much water to take out of me, and I literally was drowning. So all this was going on, and that's when Tom came onto the picture. So anyway, make a long story short, call him at 9 o'clock that night, calls my wife, And he says, Michael has this electricity in his ankle. And whatever. So all of a sudden, around 9:30, I got up to go to the bathroom. And it was the first time I peed, which is, when you have no kids, amazing. And I peed. It was excruciating. You know, you're using things that you haven't used in 3 months, literally. And I remember it was excruciating, burning, and I think it was very brown. So, you know, you're still filled with poisons and stuff. So Tom's like, that's a good sign, that's a good sign. So the next day, I can't remember, Tom could fill in the details. Someone either stole the Xana juice or took it out of here, because when the nephrologist came in, I kind of said, I said, I peed for the first time. And I said, you know, I think I can't be sure. I said, it could be this juice. And he looked at me, and I don't want to disparage you. He's a nice guy. He goes, don't you ever mention that juice or anything ever again to me. And he was adamant. So I said, I knew my way now. I'm not going to say a word. I'm just going to stay course. Somehow the juice got stolen or something. Tom thinks maybe they might have thrown it out. Maybe the doctor said, get rid of that, because we started having to hide it. And what happened was, I didn't take it the next day. For whatever reason, maybe they took the juice, and I shut right down again. So then Tom made another batch of it, I guess, brought it back to the hospital, and I took it again. I'll tell you, I think I peed 3 or 4 times, and I'm telling you, I was peeing again. I couldn't, like, strong. I think the one pee might have been, it felt like 3-4 minutes. I'm not kidding you. It was like, I couldn't believe this. So the surgeon comes back in, and I had catheter ports in my groin for the dialysis, because it was such a severe case, they couldn't even put them in here. And I show you this, the cuts here. We had 24 hours. He said, I got to put a port in your arm because it's getting dangerous. If you have any more bacteria through your groin area, it's not a great area to have these ports in. And what happened was, Tom and I like saying, can we delay it? We put off putting this port in. I did not want another surgery. I was burnt. They had cut me up everywhere. And the surgeon's like, no, we got to put this in. I said, can we wait 24 hours to put the port in? I said, I think my urination's coming back. I'm not going to need this permanent port. I said, I think I'm getting better here. I just, you know, I wasn't going into all the white Xana juice he made for me, but I was doing what I was going to do. So I kept getting better and peeing, and the surgeon came and was like, we're doing it tomorrow. And we tried to ask for a 24-hour reprieve. I could not get it. I understand that point. If that got bacteria down in the groin and then it spread again, forget it. So I went in for the surgery. They put the port in. I'm taking the juice from Tom. I come out of surgery, and I'll never forget, that next afternoon after I had the surgery, the port's in me, and the doctor, the nephrologist, walks into the room after the blood work and says, we're taking you off dialysis. I'm like, here I am all bandaged up. I'm another wreck from the surgery. And what do you mean? He goes, your numbers are incredible. I never seen anything like it. He said, I don't know what failure is. I still don't remember this day. I don't know if it's 30's failure, but like 10 is bad. Whatever the failure mark for kidneys is, I was 100%. And by the time I got to Tom, I think we dropped down to 5 or 3. I mean, this is the area where you don't need dialysis. And it was like a miracle. So I'm like, that's great. Because to get that guy in here and flood out the room again, I couldn't do it anymore. So he was shot. He was done. And I continued taking the juice. And to this day, I think I just went to the nephrologist. I still go to him. I have to. But I think my last kidney numbers, 1 is perfect for kidneys. My kidney value, I think the last one was 1.3, which most people in this room now watching this probably have a 1.2, 1. It's basically, for all practical purposes, normal. And he says it's a miracle, and that's how we left it. I didn't get into it anymore. I tried to tell him again about the juice, but I knew it was not going to happen. And here I am, a living example of that, because Tom really turned around the kidneys. And then everything else, obviously, once you get the kidneys around, they're cleaning, along with the liver, they're cleaning your blood. So once you get those kidneys functioning, everything else starts coming on board. And I walked out of the hospital, and it was amazing. And I'm not going to tell you, I had a lot of prayer too. I'm telling you, the juice is amazing, and I also had a lot of prayer. But I always tell people with the story with the prayer when the guy says it was a flood, and he's on his porch, and he says, God, the house it's flooding, and he sends an ambulance by, 2 inches of water. He's like, oh, no, God's going to take care of me. And then he gets up on a chair, and then a boat comes by. He's like, no, God's going to take care of me. And then finally a helicopter comes by. He's like, no, God's going to take care of me. And then he dies, and he goes to heaven. He says to God, God, I thought you were going to take care of me when I needed you. I prayed to you when I needed you. And he says, what do you want? I sent you a helicopter, a cop, and this, And the point is that through prayer, here comes Tom like the white knight. So you can't, they're together, so... And that was it. I'm going to give us a quick side story to my wife. This is just another issue. My wife had GBS. I don't know if that's right, Tom. I'll tell you, I think it's called the GBS virus. 30% of women have it in pregnancy. And my wife just gave birth 14 days ago to a baby. And the baby looks just like Tom. But I'm not going to say anything because I was in a coma when I conceived, and I'm a little nervous, but I'm not going to get into it anyway. So my wife had GBS, and the midwife told her, you're going to have to get on vancomycin. Okay, I was on that. It's a nasty drug. It's amazing antibiotic. That's MRSA patients and worse get that. And what happened was I called Tom up and I said, Tom, I do not want my wife on vancomycin. And the reason she had to be on vancomycin because of this GBS positive is because if the baby comes out of the canal and gets the bacteria, it could be a dangerous thing. So I did some research on it on the computer, and I think it's 1 in 2,000 that could get something, but it's still a nasty thing that could happen to the baby. But one of my kids, before I started having home births and water births, which we kind of progressed to, my second one was loaded with antibiotics. He should have never been put on it. I should have never been in the hospital for the birth. His color was off, and they loaded him with antibiotics, and it was just his color was off. To make a long story short on that issue, my son has asthma, and he has tremendous allergy issues, and I did a lot of research that if you have given antibiotics in the first year of life, in the first month of life, this is the first day of life, that you could have asthma the rest of your life. And we've suffered with it tremendously. And I told my wife, I said, I'm not getting that vancomycin because it's a drip. And they put the vancomycin in your arm at the time of birth because she came positive with GBS. This was only 2 weeks ago. My family doesn't know about it because I didn't want to get into it with them. And so I said to the midwife, she was, well, you have 4 days to give birth. I said, so can we take the test then? She was, it's unusual. You test positive. That's a nasty bacteria. Again, it's not, a lot of women have it. You just give antibiotics. But the way Lena would be giving it to, because she may have had a water birth with, they'd have to give it to her, like I told you, in the arm. And the problem with that is then she'd have to dump all her breast milk, because now the breast milk is going to be loaded with vancomycin. And I said, oh my goodness, the last thing I want is a baby loaded with you have a very, very, a brand new baby. Their intestines, the flora is basically the mother's flora. Now you're going to wipe it out. And then all the allergies again, which we're struggling with my family. So I called Tom. I'm not going to tell you the exact protocol. I promised my wife I wouldn't go through it. But basically, if you she would take a shower and I would spray her with the Xana juice. And she took it orally as well. And Tom said from the very first phone call, and I got to tell you, I didn't believe him. I just didn't, because I couldn't understand how, he said if you take a glass of this, and on Tuesday, 2 days later, you're going to be tested, the bacteria is going to be gone. How does the bacteria get from here down to that area, and then you're tested with, I said, Tom, he's like, I guarantee it. I said, Tom, I will do your protocol, because the protocol we learned online was to give Hibiclens. Hibiclens, a very strong antibiotic. It actually wipes all the bacteria away. If you wipe all the bacteria away, Tom goes, if your wife breathes in and then takes that test, that's how quickly the bacteria can come back. When you swab yourself, he goes, so that Hibiclens is not going to work. You know, you read on the website, it could work, and do this and that. So I just said, let's just follow with Tom. So I took the kid, Clem's, I put it in the cabinet, never opened it. In fact, I got to get my money back for it. I just remembered. Got to bring it back to CVS. I never opened it. So anyway, to make a long story short, sprayed my wife after the shower, gave her to her, got it in her, and Tuesday morning, it was snowing, and which was like a miracle, because I said, good, we get an extra 4 hours. She put the test off. So I said, Elena, good, take some more, spray it all over her body, the Xanajuice. We put it in a spray bottle, sprayed her, and so she takes the test. So I'm like, Lena, I don't know, I can't imagine this being, because that means she's going to have to go in 5 hours early if it's positive. She's got to get the port put in for the drip, the vancomycin drip, and I'm like kind of like down. And neither of us wanted to call the midwife. I didn't want to call. I just didn't want to hear that it didn't come. I said, Tom, I trust you, Tom, but I didn't have faith in it. So one day goes by, 2 days. I said, Lena, this is not good. If she has not called us, then I'm sure she would have let us know. The midwife had emailed my other email, and I wasn't opening them up, the emails. And she's like, did you hear about the test? I said, no. And I'm quiet. And I'm in front of my wife because she knows the midwife called me. I'm like, really? And I go, oh, I can't believe the news. Now, to let all you know, Lena was completely negative. It was fantastic. One of the happiest times in these years of pregnancy, because this was like a big issue with us, because we've suffered for 9 years with my son with his asthma, and none of them else had it, and it was all because of them cramming these antibiotics in. So not to give antibiotics meant a lot to us. And then I told my wife, I'm like, yeah, bad news. And she's like, and I look at her and she says, oh, I can kill you. She goes, test came back negative, no antibiotics, and she gave birth within 2 hours, pushed the baby out, and absolutely 100% great. And the baby's doing amazing because Lena had all that Xanajuice in her. So we were like so excited, and I would say it could be probably our healthiest baby. I'm not, but I'm like indebted to Tom just for that part, because I just knew that antibiotics would have messed up a bunch of other things. Because our intention was to take a water bath. You can't put the antibiotic in a water bath. You can't do this, you can't do that, and then you're strapped down. And when you're in pregnancy, you want movement. You don't want to stifle the birth. You want to walk around. During this pregnancy, we were in the Fortunate's wall at 7 centimeters. So we were a couple, the baby's head was probably crying at one point, but we didn't care. We stayed out of that hospital. We want to stay away from, kind of walk, and then with the great news that Tom gave us, that the midwife gave us about Tom's juice, so we were really grateful for that. And that's my story. I have no horse in the race. I just tell the truth. And I'm healthy, and I'm doing great, and I'm really thankful for Tom for those 2, areas. Obviously, one was, on my deathbed, and he came through. And my kidneys, like I said, and the only reason my kidneys, by the way, are only 1.3, not 100%. The main reason is because there's one of the drugs I'm taking for my heart, not a bad one, intentionally pops that number up for the kidney. So it would probably, if I didn't have to be on it, my kidneys would probably be 100% normal. But he said for practical purposes, they're 100% anyway. It's just a number, I might be a 0.1 or 2 off, something like that. And we're still only within a year or two, a year and a half of when I get out of the hospital. So I have to still repair my body on the other issues. So other than that, I'm doing pretty good. We were going to name the baby after Tom, but then my wife says, that's enough. That's where you draw the line. Okay. I lost, I was lost 50, 60 pounds. Now, I'm pretty okay. I lost 60 pounds from this weight right now. So I think I was down to, I want to say 140 at 6'1", and I could not walk, by the way. I could not walk. I came home and I was on the floor of my house for the first month. I couldn't even take a step onto the house. I don't know how they let me out that early, because we had a lot of bad nights at home, for all the other issues going on. It was nerve-wracking to be alone with your wife at night and not breathing and all that issues. It was, but it was good. I got to tell you one last story. It has nothing to do with Xanajuice. I came home and we had all the kids put back of the house. They didn't know. And it was, I forgot the day it was that I came home, but we called the kids and said, Papa's not coming home today. And I called ahead and I told my brother Tommy to get a refrigerator box and put it on the front lawn. And I would get in the refrigerator box, and I called the kids and said, Papa can't come home, but he feels so bad. I forgot, I don't know if it was one of their birthdays or something. It was in a cage. I said, but he's going to send you guys a gift home. And we have this on video. My wife doesn't want to put on YouTube. I think it would go viral. But anyway, because she doesn't really want to expose the kids to the, young kids to the YouTube and all that. And so what happened is my brother Tommy did not get a refrigerator box. He got a microwave box, okay? So I could not move, but I said, I'm getting in that box no matter what. I didn't care. I said, I got to do this for my kids. So I got in the box. My brother Marco literally, bending my arm and bending my head, and then he duct taped the box. I felt I was in a coffin, but I said, I got to do it. I'm talking to myself, Michael, don't panic, don't panic. It was this tiny little box. So they duct taped it, and they rang the bell, and they said, oh, UPS just delivered the box. So all the kids came running outside, my wife, my mother-in-law, and my sister, and they're on the front lawn, and they're like, come on, open. They're tearing at the box, they're tightening the tape, and then I popped out. It was a very emotional scene. I hadn't seen my kids in, 3 months. It was my life, and it was bad. But, I think my wife brought him to the hospital only once because I was so severe and with all the stuff around him. But to see them that day and come out of that box, I'm like so thankful to God for that moment. And they were like, it was amazing. And then I literally had a walker or a wheelchair. They went from pretty active guy to that. But, and I was peeing that day. You know what I'm saying? That, that was the greatest feeling. You don't understand. And not to have a dialysis machine, to be on 5 hours a day, I thought my life would be over. I don't know how dialysis patients do it. To be on, it would be, I think it was 3 days a week for 3 to 5 hours a day. I said, I can't do this. I have a family. I'm raising a family. I can't be in the hospital. So that issue there alone was crucial. There's no question I would have been on dialysis probably the rest of my life. First of all, I don't know anyone, to my knowledge, you might be 5%. I don't remember the percentage, but to get on dialysis, you don't get off it. You're on forever. So when I saw that machine coming in every day, and I'm telling you, I think he took it off within like days. I think it was, Tom would know better than I, like 2 or 3 days of the Xana juice. Yeah. He literally came in, he goes, I don't know what to tell you. He goes, these numbers are crazy. He goes, you don't need dialysis anymore. And I said, Lane, I don't need that machine anymore. To get up and to be able to pee on your own, it's the pleasures on us, it's not, you don't really realize, what that simple task is. We take it for granted. I have a very simple formula. I was on deathbed. So for a doctor to tell me don't take it or be upset at it, if you're going to die anyway, take what you're going to take. So my feeling is, if you're on dialysis, you look at the person and say, take the juice, and if it doesn't heal you, you still have dialysis tomorrow morning. It's not a big deal to me. It doesn't hurt you in any way. There's no downside at all. It's a food. You're having food. You're having food that probably maybe 2 generations ago had. You know what I'm saying? When the soil wasn't overturned and stripped of everything, and you have real bacteria. That's why you didn't have all what we have today. Now you have diabetes is rampant. It's linked to heart disease. It's linked to kidney disease. It's all the same thing. We don't have the good bacteria in our bodies, So to me, if you're on dialysis, you know what? Don't say a word to the doctor. You take your juice, and if your numbers start going down, you know what? They'll know quickly. They're going to tell you don't need it. Well, by the way, you don't need dialysis on Wednesday. They'll knock out a day. And then you say, oh, by the way, you don't need next Friday. That's what they did to me, but much quicker. Every organ in my body was done. I was given last rites 3 times. In fact, I would say I actually went out to one of the priests who had come to the hospital 2 weeks ago, and he goes, Michael, I'm sitting across from you. He goes, I never thought I'd see you ever again. I was on every psychotropic drug you could, Ativan, this, that, the Latin, nasty, nasty stuff. And when the guy came in, said to my wife, it's a true story, said to my wife, Mrs. Posillico, I'm very, very sorry for what this is doing to his personality, these drugs. And my wife looked at him and said, that is his personality. Because I'm a little crazy anyway. But so I'm on almost nothing now, literally, except a couple, and one I shouldn't even be on. They'll probably be taking that off. But a very small dose for the heart, and that's it. But everything else is, my kidneys are like, I don't need any medication, nothing. Thank you, guys. Thank you. Thanks, Tom, and thanks, Xanajuice.
Good.